All right, hi everyone. This is Niall. We're going to talk about an important concept in Excel, which is absolute and relative cell references. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a review here based on the last video. So here's a spreadsheet that you can take a look at. You don't have to copy this and follow along with me, but in a minute I'm going to have you recreate another little spreadsheet and actually follow along with me. But for now, you can just watch what I'm doing here because this is review. So I've got a little spreadsheet here that shows the regions for my business and then the quarters, quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four. And so I've got the sales for each quarter for each region. So what I want to do here is I've got my total column here in column F, and I want to sum up the sales for the northern region for all four quarters here. So the easiest way to do that is to click into cell F2 and then press the auto sum button over here, and that will guess what cells we want to use. And Excel usually does a pretty good job of guessing, and it looks like it got it right here. So I'm going to hit enter to finish off that formula, and you can see my formula is using the sum function here. So we got equals sum, and then inside of the parentheses we have the range that we're trying to sum up, which is B2 to E2. So what I want to do here is I want to copy this formula down so that I can figure out the total sales for all my other regions. So I'm going to get the fill handle here, the skinny black cursor, by putting it over the lower right corner of the cell that has the formula in it. And what I'm going to do is drag um, down to row 5, and that will copy the formula. Now here's what I want you to notice. So in row 2 here, my formula, the range is using B2 to E2. Now I copied and pasted that formula down, but look at what happened here. I'm going to move my cursor down to the next row down, which is row 3 here. And my formula got updated. So even though I copied B2 to E2 from above, my formula got updated, and here it says B3 to E3, and that's what we want because we want to sum up this row here. Same for the central region here. So um, it didn't do an absolute copy because what I copied here was B2 to E2. So what it did is it copied the pattern. So the pattern is include the four cells that are directly to the left of this total cell. So it's copying that pattern, four cells to the left. So when I copy and paste the formula, it's copying the pattern, four cells to the left. Um, so those are called relative cell references. Um, and by default, this is how Excel will copy your formulas. And most of the time, that's how we want them to work. But there are instances when that's not how we want them to work, and I'm going to show you one right now. So I'm going to switch over to this other worksheet in my workbook and go ahead and pause the movie right now and go ahead and recreate this little spreadsheet right here. And then I want you to do these steps with me. I think it'll be good practice. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video by now and you've recreated this little spreadsheet on your own, and we can do this together. So what I've got here is I've got 3 employees, Bob, Sally, and Jimmy, and I've got their current salaries here, and I'd like to give them a bonus. And what I want to do is give them a bonus based on this rate here over at H1. So first of all, I want to figure out what Bob's bonus is going to be. So I'm going to put my cursor into cell C2, and go ahead and do this with me here. And I'll type in the equal sign because we're entering a formula into this cell. And then I'm going to click on cell B2. So what I want to do is take his current salary, which is in B2, and then I'm going to multiply it. So I'm going to use the keyboard to enter the asterisk. That's our multiply operator. And then I'm going to go ahead and click over on cell H1 because that's got the bonus. So here's what my formula looks like. Equals B2 times H1, excuse me. I'll hit enter, and that looks right. So a 3% bonus on $120,000 is $3,600, so that looks right to me. So now what I want to do is copy this formula down to the other 2 employees. So I'm going to get the fill handle here. Now here's where the problem occurs, because remember, by default, Excel will copy the pattern from the cells that are being used. So if I go ahead and click and hold and drag, you'll see that the bonuses aren't calculated properly here for Sally and Jimmy. and that's because Excel by default is using a pattern to remember which cells to use when we're pasting these formulas. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I click here on cell C3, actually what I'm going to do is double click on it. So look at what it did there. It's taking the cell to the left, which is the proper cell. That's Sally's salary. But then it's copying the pattern. And so what it's doing here is it's grabbing the cell below 3%, which is not what we want. We want this, when we copy and paste this formula, we want this cell to stay fixed on H1. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and delete these formulas here. So I'm clicking in there and deleting, and I'm even going to go ahead and delete that first one. We're going to redo the first one. So I'm going to go back and do Bob's over again. So I'm going to type in equals, and then click on cell B2. And we do want to use the pattern for column B, because so when we copy and paste this formula down, we want it to be B3 and B4 when we paste. So we want that to stay, we want Excel to remember the pattern for that. But for the other cell, for the one that has the 3% in it, we want that one to stay fixed. So I'm going to enter the asterisk here. So we're going to do equals B2 times, and then I'm going to click on H3. Or I'm sorry, that's H1. It has 3% in it. And what I need to do to make sure that our formula stays fixed on cell H1 is I need to add dollar signs before the H and before the 1. So you have to do it before both the column and the row. So when you do these kind of cell references, this is called an absolute cell reference. Don't forget, a lot of people just put the $1 sign in, but you have to put the dollar sign in before the column and the row. So by adding those dollar signs, when I copy and paste this formula, those dollar signs are going to tell Excel to stay locked on H1. Don't copy a pattern, but just stay locked on H1 when you copy and paste a formula. So I'm going to hit enter here and see what I have entered. So there's the correct formula, equals B2 times $H $1. I'm going to hit enter to finalize that. Now see what happens when I copy this down here. So I'm going to get the fill handle, and I'm going to copy and paste, and now we get the correct bonuses for Sally and Jimmy. And that's because we made H1 an absolute cell reference by adding those dollar signs. So we don't, when you do the dollar signs, you're not copying the pattern anymore. You're staying locked on that one cell, and that's what we want. So I'm going to click here on cell C3 and double click on it, and it'll show me what's being used in the formula. So it copied the pattern for column B. So the pattern was grab the cell that's to the left of this cell, but stay fixed on cell H1. And then if I'm going to hit escape here to kind of clear all those selections out. If I go ahead and click on cell C4, here's Jimmy's bonus. If I double click on it, you can see that it copied the pattern for column B. So go one to the left, but it's staying fixed on cell H1 to use that bonus. So, all right, so you could go ahead and finish this out if you wanted to put a formula in here to calculate what their new salary would be. I'll just do that real quick. So equal sign, and what we want to do is add B2, their current salary, to their bonus. So I'm going to press the plus sign on the keyboard, and then I'm going to click on C2, and that gives me equals B2 plus C2. I'll hit enter. That looks good. Now in this case, we don't want to use any absolute cell references. We want to copy the patterns for both of the cells being used in the formula. So if I get the fill handle here and drag it down a few rows, you'll see that we're using relative cell references for both the column B and C in this formula. So in this case, we're going with the default, but in the previous example where we wanted to calculate into 3%, we had to stay fixed on cell H1. So I guess I would just play with this a little bit and maybe come up with little examples like this one where you can use absolute cell references. And if you come up with a good one, let me know, and maybe I'll share it with the rest of the class. All right, have a good one.